We'll take a look at the update callback of ProxyProvider. If you look at the type def of the update function, the update callback of ProxyProvider receives the build context, the value of type T, and the previous of nullable type R as arguments and returns the object of type R. A previous is a less the return value of create or update callback. Update is required, whereas create can be null. That's why previous is a nullable type. However, if you look at the red box in the constructor on the left, you may think, what is this? The update with 2 arguments called an update with 3 arguments. We'll see why this is in a moment. Next, let's take a quick look at the update callback of ProxyProvider 2. If you look at the type def of ProxyProvider 2's update function, the update callback receives the build context, the value of type T, the value of 2 of type T2, and the previous of nullable type R as arguments and returns the object of type R. The difference from ProxyProvider is that there is one more argument, type T2. However, if you look at the red box of the constructor on the left this time, an update with 2 arguments calls an update with 4 arguments. You may be thinking that this is becoming more and more confusing. If you look at ProxyProvider, there is just a ProxyProvider, and there is a ProxyProvider 2 to ProxyProvider 6, and there is another one called ProxyProvider 0. ProxyProviderN is the syntactic sugar of ProxyProvider 0. ProxyProvider A result is equal to ProxyProvider 0 result below. In the update callback of ProxyProvider 0, the instance of object A is read from visit tree, stored in variable A, and then the update function is called. This time, A is entered as a second argument. Where do you think you've seen this before? Let's go back for a moment. That's the part where the red box is drawn. In the same way, ProxyProvider 2 AB result is equal to ProxyProvider 0 result below. In the update callback of ProxyProvider 0, the instance of object A is read from visit tree, stored in the variable A. Similarly, the instance of object B is read from visit tree, stored in variable B, and then the update function is called. This time, the second and third arguments are entered as A and B respectively. Let's go back for a moment again. This is also the part where the red box is drawn. If you look at the update function like this, you will understand the update function in the constructor better. So if we use ProxyProvider 0, we can even make a ProxyProvider 100 instead of ProxyProvider 6. Now let's take a look at the ChangeNotifierProxyProvider. You might think that the ChangeNotifierProxyProvider is the same as ProxyProvider, but there are some differences. ChangeNotifierProxyProvider is a ChangeNotifierProvider that synchronizes values with external change notifiers. Let's look at an example below. To create my change notifier, we'll assume that my change notifier depends on my model. However, since create is called only once, I gave listen false option. If you don't give listen false option, that won't make any sense, since it means that you will continue to listen to something that will only be called once. To summarize, in this example, when creating my change notifier, it is created depending on another my model value. If the value of my model does not change, there is no problem. But if my model changes, there is no way to update my change notifier. If the value of my model is a class that does not change, for example, if it is a repository that makes API calls, you can use it like this. To solve this issue, you can use it like the code shown here. What this means can be summarized as follows. Whenever my model is updated, my change notifier is updated, but the same instance is used over and over again, and is not created again. This is a very important point. And here are 2 updates. The second update is a method of my change notifier, and the first update is a property of ChangeNotifierProxyProvider. It was quite confusing at first because they use the function with the same name in the manual. And a typical implementation example of my ChangeNotify is shown here. In Update, you use the myModel instance to do necessary work, and if necessary, call notify listeners. And let's take a look at a few things to take note of. The first is don't create a change notifier directly in Update. This will cause your state to be lost when one of the values used updates. But sometimes when I look at online lectures, I see a case where they create it in Update. And what's problematic with this is that there is an overhead of disposal of the old notifier and then creating and subscribing to the new notifier. But other than this reason, I think that creating a change notifier every time an instance of myModel changes is against the design principle of ChangeNotify, because the key point of ChangeNotify is that ChangeNotify is mutated and notifies of the mutation. So creating a new instance every time is against the design principle of ChangeNotify, in my opinion. Second, I think this is very important. Use a proxy provider if possible. What this means is that if the object to be created consists only of a combination of other objects without HTTP calls or other similar side effects, it is preferable to create an immutable object using ProxyProvider every time. As for the use of ProxyProvider whenever possible, I'll show you examples of how to use it directly in To-Do app and Weather app. Starting in the next chapter, we'll take a look at ProxyProvider examples.